because the legendary principal of a school that I went to for a number of years, FAMU High, was a man named Matthew Esteris, and Mr. Esteris actually was a Morehouse man as well. And so, what's interesting is the first time I really realized that I wanted to go to Morehouse, man, was back in, I think it was fourth grade. Mr. Esteris had this huge sign that was it was a poster actually that was right outside of his door, and it said, "Be somebody, be a Morehouse man." And so you're talking like around 1980, 81. And so the guys that were depicted on it had these big afros. But again, there was something about that phrase, "be somebody, be a Morehouse man."
Right.
And when you would talk to him about it, his eyes would just light up. And obviously, we learned about the history, all of the great men who had gone to that institution. So even in elementary school, I knew that that was where I wanted to ultimately go to school. And my parents both pushed that too, because even though I could have gone to FAMU and had a great career there, it's a fine institution, one of the best in the world, and what have you. At the end of the day, one of my big concerns, brother, was like having grown up on that campus where so many of the professors, because my mom was an English professor up there, she used to teach at the high school, and then she became an English professor on the college campus. So many of those professors and deans, they were like aunts and uncles to me. So it was one of those things where it was like, my dad and mom both felt like as a man, I needed to strike out on my own and be able to go somewhere where I could, sink or swim on my own, so to speak. And I relished that challenge. And that's one of the things that I thought was just so outstanding when I got there, because again, there are talented brothers at every school across America, including every HBCU.
Right.
But it was really a trip. And I'm quite sure you felt the same way when we got there that first week, and you're realizing that, okay, as academically superior as I was, that everybody that you were talking to had similar accolades coming from their high schools, or they had these great goals and they were focused and driven. And man, I have not been able to replicate that again. And, one of the best parts of going to Morehouse, and we kind of get it a little bit on social media now, but it was the ability to sit around and talk. I mean, just like the format you have here on your show, Kicking It.
Right.
I mean, some of the best debates and conversations, as you remember, were sitting right there in the dorm rooms, or going to the forums that they would have over at Clark, Spelman, or on our campus and what have you, where brothers and sisters used to just kick knowledge. And I mean, all night long, sometimes kicking knowledge. And so in a way, it's been kind of cool, the social media thing. A lot of people talk about the bad about social media. One of the good things is it does give us an opportunity to exchange our ideas about the pertinent issues like we used to back then. But again, there was nothing like that experience, man. And so what happened is after we graduated, I was in one of those weird I didn't know whether I wanted to go left or right, because as you could tell from some of my posts, I love history. History always came very naturally to me, being able to remember dates, places, who did what. That always just made sense to me. And what I was not 100% sure on was, did I want to become a history professor or did I want to become a lawyer? And at the end of the day, really the ultimate goal was to head into politics. All right. And that's changed somewhat over the last 20 years. But initially, that's what I wanted to do, man. And so I came back to Tallahassee, went to graduate school for about a year and a half at FAMU, and was trying to figure out, okay, do I go get a PhD? I was looking at the PhD program at Florida State here in Tallahassee and at Purdue up in Indiana. And then I got applied and got into a bunch of law schools, but ultimately decided to go to the University of Florida for law school. So that's kind of how you see me with the Morehouse degree, the FAMU degree, and the UF law degree, man. So that, I spent about a good 8 years trying to get it, and then have been just on the grind ever since, brother.
Bro, you got it. And all that school, you definitely got it. And now, how did you choose the discipline? I know, going into law, what made you choose that particular discipline, like criminal?
No, man, I'm going to tell you what's interesting about that. Okay, so when I was getting ready to start law school, as we all remember, it was the end of the O.J. Simpson trial, man. And so, all of us remember where we were when you first saw A.C. Callins and O.J. out there on the 405, dipping away from all of the police officers and what have you. And so, like every other American, that was high drama back in 94 and 95. And I will tell you that I was not one of those who was able to watch it every day. Obviously I was in school and working, but I would catch the clips in the evening, But I did watch the entirety of Johnny Cochran's closing arguments. And as I sat there and watched and listened to him, I was like, wow, I would really love to be able to do what he does someday. And so once the trial was over and OJ was acquitted, there was a glut of books that came out. All of the defense lawyers wrote books. I think Marcia Clark wrote a book. I didn't read anybody's book but Johnny. My godmother bought me a copy of Journey to Justice, which is Johnny Cochran's book. I read that thing probably in a day and a half. And what I did is I pretty much followed his blueprint. And so Johnny Cochran started off as a prosecutor. Chuck Hobbs started off as a prosecutor. Then he switched out and started becoming a private defense attorney and did civil rights cases and personal injury cases. Chuck Hobbs has done the same thing. Now, Johnny later actually went back to the DA's office in L.A. for a little bit as, I think the deputy district attorney, the number 3 ranking officer in the organization for several years before going back out into private practice. I haven't done that, but pretty much I've tried to follow the outline that Johnny Cochran gave, and it's been good to me. I mean, I've been able to accomplish some pretty good things in the legal career, but more than anything, where I am now, I'm getting ready to turn 45 on Saturday, and one of the things that I'm most interested in is segueing more into what we're doing right now, which is the writings, that I do for the Hill, that I do for the Griot, and my own website that I just launched in March, Observation Point. Right. Those are the things that interest me the most now. It used to be a thing where I was like, okay, I want to run for office. I want to be a congressman or maybe a senator or, hey, dare I say even the president at some point. But I've soured on that as the years have gone because I'm more interested in the theoretical aspects of how, laws get passed and policy gets implemented than I am actually, interested in going out and pressing flesh and, shaking hands, kissing babies and asking people to vote for me. I mean, that's just doesn't hold the interest for me that it once did. But sitting up and writing about it and talking about why this person is screwed up in the head and why this is a bunch of bull right here, those are the things that make my blood pump. And so I think that's my calling. And that's what I'm going to be focused on for the next few years. Until I guess the good Lord gives me something else to focus on. Yeah,
man. Now, you were in school just like me during that whole Rodney King verdict.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Indeed, I was out there raising all kind of hell.
What was not to incriminate you.
Yeah. Well, I think, bro, I'm not gonna lie. I think the statute of limitations has run, so we probably are all real good. But truth be told, man, that day, I'm always surprised when there are some people who don't realize there actually was a very serious riot in Atlanta. Also, I know some people don't like to use that word; they like to use uprising. That's just semantics. I mean, call it what you will. But there was hell being raised for 2 solid days in Atlanta. And if I live another 45 full years, I will never forget what happened that week. Because what's interesting, man, I don't know about you, but I missed the first day's events. Like, I was on campus, because I remember we were getting ready to head into finals. That's what I remember. And I was working and trying to get some papers done. And by that evening, when I got back to the dorm, my roommate, Victor Owens, we were up in Kilgore, and we were sitting there looking. Victor. Yeah, man, no doubt. And what I realized, I said, wait a minute. So there was a march downtown, and it turned into chaos, okay? And so I was like, all right. And so what was interesting is, I'll never forget, they convened that impromptu meeting at King Chapel. Mayor Jackson and several other, luminaries were there. And I went in, and it was it was one of those things where, man, I was like, wow, it was brothers that I always thought, and I won't call out no names, but cats that I always thought were like, even keeled and mild mannered, that were really turned up about, like, whoa. And I'm sitting there thinking, all right, well, what's going on? Let me pay attention. Let me listen. And I remember thinking to myself, like, as Maynard and everybody else kept trying to appeal to us to, like, just calm down. And this isn't the way it was done. And, Julian Bond, rest in peace, both of those Morehouse brothers, this is the way you do it. You need to do this, that. I remember thinking to myself, nobody in here is really listening to these cats. And if it starts back up tomorrow, it's going to be interesting. So what's funny about it, man, is that next morning about 6 a.m., my dad called me because that's what he used to do. Dad was an early riser, just like I am now. Yeah. I got the phone rang at 6 a.m. I knew who it was. It was Pop. Yep. And Pop was like, he said, hey, check, I saw what was going on on the television last night, son, and talking with that command colonel type voice that he had.
Yeah.
And if that you're not to be involved, and all I could do was say yes, sir, because I wasn't one of those insolent types. I was like, okay, especially he's the one that's writing the check, so I'm like, hey, I better not run afoul of him because I ain't trying to have to come back home to the community college or something like that, right? And so what wound up happening is I said yes, sir, but man, that next day, I mean, when daylight broke and you started to realize that was that huge police presence down there, like going down. I guess that was going down Fair Street. Yeah, they were trying to box us in and what have you to keep us from marching toward downtown. And I was like, this is going to be ugly. And again, no incrimination, but I saw my share of rocks and bottles getting thrown. I saw those places getting looted and man, it was ugly. The tear gas, I'll never forget what that smells like. Yeah, the police car on fire. I could still feel the heat from that. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's not like I was that close to it, but people don't really understand when stuff's on fire like that, you don't have to be in super close proximity to feel like, and I was just like, woo, it was just wild, man. And like I say, the tear gas and the helicopters overhead, I will never forget those 2 days in Atlanta, man. And there
was no cell phones, so
right.
I was out down the street too, and we did the marching. We went down to a certain area, and I know the police got to a point where they weren't going to let us go to a certain point, so that's when they really started roughing up, you know what I'm saying? They was hitting dudes, girls, billy clubs, everything. I'm like, y'all hitting the women, so that made us really go in, you know what I'm saying? Like, man, get off her, you know what I'm saying? So we protecting the queens, man. We out, and they were hitting them, man. We was on fire.
But you know what's funny about that? This is going to be real random, but what I haven't figured out yet is, it seems like there were an overabundance of bottles and rocks that were around to be thrown that day. Like on any given day, I mean, think about it. If you were walking toward Woodruff Library or going over to Harkness to head over toward Clark or whatever, you didn't see no bunch of bottles laying around and rocks. But for whatever reason that day, everything that was necessary to combat in as much as you could, law enforcement was there. And again, I'm not incriminating myself or you, but for students to do what needed to be done to make sure that our voices were heard in that type of manner. So I was like, where, sometimes I'm stopping and thinking, I'm like, where in the hell did all those bottles and rocks just come from, And so I saw cats making Molotov cocktails. Man, I'm trying to tell you, it was that was a wild 2-day period. That's all I'm trying to tell you. I missed day one, but I was in the thick of it on day two. And I'll never forget day two as long as I live,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right, man. We got so much to cover. All right, so on that topic with the whole police and brutality and injustice, and I mean, you know what's been going on for the past couple of years.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
One of your, you got a group of high-profile lawyer friends, and I know you were actually you spoke about one of your guys, Benjamin Crump.
Yeah, absolutely. I've known Crump for a long time.
Who represented the Trayvon Martin case.
Yes.
So I know you were very vocal about that, about the whole Trayvon Martin. You were very much into it, just like a lot of us, you know what I'm saying? It's just that you were a voice, you know what I'm saying? We were like, dang, what Chuck got to say about this? You know what I'm saying? And it was crazy, man. It was definitely a letdown, you know what I'm saying? And I want you to take me back, man, to your thought.
All right.
Man.
No, man, that's what's up. And I'm going to tell you what's interesting about that, Kysii, is I was a late comer to Facebook, right? Like I didn't actually get a page until about 2011. And I got it because I was starting to write more for different newspapers and what have you. And I was like, okay, this might be a good vehicle for me to be able to get these articles out and what have you, and generate a little buzz. And so, what's interesting about that is when the Trayvon situation came around, like it was one of those amazing events in terms of where I was able to, like most defense lawyers, usually you're busy as all get out on every other week. And what I mean by that is, like, most courts operate on a calendar whereby you have trials one week and then you have defense. And so I was able to, like, most defense lawyers usually you're busy as all get out on every other week. And what I mean by that is, like, most courts operate on a calendar whereby you have trials one week and then you have defense. case management conferences on the other week. Okay. And so what's odd about that is I'll never forget when George Zimmerman's trial finally came around. That summer was a summer in which I just, for the 2 weeks